Referencing should be the easiest marks in your assignment, but every semester students lose marks because their citations are missing, inconsistent, or attached to the wrong information. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what to reference, where to put your citations, and how to avoid the mistakes that make your reference list look like it was assembled during an existential crisis at like 11:58 p.m. on the night that the assignment was due. The first thing to consider is what actually needs a reference or a citation. You need to reference information that comes from someone or somewhere else. So that includes statistics and numerical data, clinical guidelines and recommendations, definitions, theories and frameworks, research claims, and specific findings that aren't considered common knowledge. So for example, if you were to state that common elements of care in the ICU create sources of pain and psychological distress, and these then predispose patients to downstream complications ranging from adverse sympathetic activation to delirium, that would be considered a factual claim that requires a citation. That's not common knowledge, so it needs evidence. There's more than one way to include an in-text citation in APA 7th, so more than one correct way to cite a source, and a good assignment will use both ways. So there's parenthetical and narrative referencing. With a parenthetical citation, you put the author and year sitting in brackets after the information they support. That's a parenthetical citation because the reference sits within parentheses. In a narrative citation, you make the author a part of your sentence. And both are correct, and good academic writing usually uses a mixture of both, so every sentence doesn't look exactly the same. And you apply the same rules for parenthetical citations and narrative citations to referencing multiple authors. So with two authors, you write both surnames in the in-text citation. So if you were doing a parenthetical citation, it might be Smith and Bean with an ampersand, comma, 2023. If you were doing a narrative citation for two authors, then it might be according to Smith and Bean, and then 2023 in brackets. And the and would be written in full for the narrative citation versus being an ampersand in the brackets for parenthetical. And then finally, for three or more authors in text, you use et al. And if you're doing that in the parenthetical citation, it's the et al. Comma versus in a narrative form, it's et al. With the dot and no comma or period and no comma. And now your end text reference list. My biggest advice, write it as you go. The second you use a source in your assignment, add the full reference to your reference list. Do not gaslight yourself and tell yourself that you'll come back and do all the referencing at the end, because you won't remember where half of it came from, and suddenly it'll be 2 a.m. and you're Google Scholar searching for a paper you vaguely remember that maybe had a blue graph in it. This is also a good time to check that your references are actually high quality, because quality matters. Markers aren't just looking at how many references you've used or that you've cited the correct information. They're looking at what you've actually referenced and where you've gotten it from. So you need to prioritize high quality, credible evidence and be much more cautious with things like blogs and commercial websites or random sites that you find on Google. The other thing is that you need to check your dates. If you're making a claim about current practice, a 20-year-old paper doesn't cut it. You can use older landmark literature, that absolutely has a place, but your evidence base needs to demonstrate that you've actually looked at the current literature. So you want to aim for less than 5 to 7 years. Now this next point shouldn't be something that we have to say, but unfortunately it is. Make sure the source actually exists. Please check that it exists. Before you submit, go through every single reference. Can you find the article? Is the author correct? Is the year correct? Does the journal, volume, and page range match? And most importantly, does the DOI work? Click it. If the DOI takes you to a completely different paper, you have a problem. And this is particularly important if you've used AI or an automatic reference generator. Never assume that because a reference looks academic, it actually exists. This is one of the things that students get pinged for academic misconduct on the most: fabrication of references. The final step is to check the formatting required by your university, and we'll look at APA 7th for this video. So you need to make sure that your reference list is alphabetical, that there's a hanging indent, consistent margins, that you've checked your italics are correct, and your DOIs are formatted as URLs. Check the small details too. So journal title and volume should be italicized. Article title shouldn't be italicized, but book titles should. You need to have consistent capitalization. These all seem like really tiny things, but together they make the difference between a reference list that looks polished and one that looks like 6 different referencing generators had an argument. And that style of referencing is what will lose you the most marks. Finally, go back and match them. Every single source cited in your assignment has to appear in your reference list and vice versa. Every source in your reference list needs to be cited in the assignment. There shouldn't be any mystery references and no references that you read once and forgot to delete or forgot to add to the reference list. Do the final check. Your reference list is a part of your academic writing. It makes up a significant proportion of your grade. It impacts the content, because if you look at your rubric, it will say that your content needs to be supported by appropriate evidence. It makes up your critical thinking marks, because you can't demonstrate critical analysis without breadth of research. It makes up your formatting and presentation marks, and it makes up, obviously, your referencing marks. So treat it like it is important, because it is. If this helped, like and subscribe. And if you want me to walk you through the entire assignment process from decoding the rubric to referencing and final submission, the full guide is linked below.